This is News Fash, the podcast where fashion and news meet for your weekly dose of insider insights. I'm your host, fashion journalist Mosha Lundström Halbert, and together we're going to stay up to date and open to learn about fashion from a variety of perspectives.
News Fash. I am here for a very unique, very special holiday edition of News Fash Live with none other than my doppelganger, my biggest inspiration, my TikTok sensation of a mother, Life Hacks Linda. Welcome, Mom, to News Fash.
Mosha. So nice to be a guest on your show.
We thought this would be a fun thing to do because we're both here in the UK for the holidays. My mother, Linda Lundström, lives in Canada, and I live between LA and the UK. So the fact that we could be together, I thought this would be a really good opportunity for us to take some of your questions as we wrap up the year in fashion. And Mom, for your listeners, why don't you introduce what's going on here in case they're a little bit confused to see me on your page? Because we're going live on Life Hacks Linda and News Fash right now.
So those of you who know me as Life Hacks Linda, and thank you to all my followers, you may not know this, but News Fash, Mosha, the host of News Fash is my daughter, Mosha Lundström Halbert. And we have separate TikToks, but we decided since we're both together celebrating the holidays that we would do a live.
Who's TikTok?
Together.
Which TikTok came first, mine or yours? I think it was yours.
I think you came to me one day and you said, "Mom, you're going to go on TikTok and you're going to go viral." And I said, "What's TikTok?" And honestly, I didn't know anything about it. And Mosha said, "Just trust me." She got me lined up on TikTok. I started making content, and I decided that I would just share things on TikTok that I wished I had time to share with my two daughters. I have another lovely daughter, Sophie. All the things that I wish I'd taught them when they were growing up, but I was too busy with my career as a fashion designer, and I felt guilty. So I thought I'm going to get rid of all this guilt by making posts about life lessons. So it's called Life Hacks Linda, and I've made over 300 videos and have quite a few people that are following me. But
yeah, you have more followers than me.
Some of my followers, so it's at Life Hacks Linda, and some of my followers, I don't think they know about you, and your followers don't know about me.
I sometimes, like the few times that you've been on News Fash, people are like, "Oh my gosh, that's your mom. Like, I thought you looked alike." But yes, I definitely copied my mother's hairstyle.
She stole my hairstyle. Okay, I've had this hairstyle for many years, different lengths here, but always the bangs.
But then you stole my glasses.
Yes, and then I said, "Like those glasses, what are they?" She said, Yves Saint Laurent, YSL. So you ordered them for me, I think.
I helped you find them online.
Yeah.
Because that was one of, before it became News Fash, that was one of my TikToks that went viral, where I was explaining to people like the crazy markup on eyewear.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and how there's just like a few conglomerates that make all the eyewear for all the luxury brands.
Yeah.
Like I got an email the other day for a promo for Cartier eyewear from Kering Group. Now Kering owns like Gucci, Balenciaga.
Yeah.
Cartier is owned by a completely different luxury group, Richemont. But like the eyewear licenses are completely different. Anyways, this is just to say.
I went to the gas after I got these. I ordered them, and they weren't inexpensive. I went to the gas station. I go to the gas station to get my manicures and pedicures because there's a gas station and manicures and pedicures right beside it. And I went into the gas station, and they have one of those cheesy little stands with the sunglasses on it. I found a pair of sunglasses that were perfect. They were $19.
You never know.
You just never know.
You never know where you're going to find like the eyewear that changes your life.
Yeah, be open to any possibility, I say.
Okay, we just got a comment from somebody saying, "Oh my OMG, I asked about living life through your colored glasses a few months ago, and now I have a pair," from Tai Tai.
Oh, wow. Do you love them?
We're a bit of like a group now of people walking around with these glasses. Now, first off, Mom, just for a little introduction, what was your earliest memory of fashion? What was the first thing that comes to mind that you were exposed to in the small northern Ontario town where you grew up?
Population 250 people at the height of the tourist season. It was a very, very, very small town in the middle of the bush in northwestern Ontario. And I have to say, my introduction to fashion came through my mom, because my mom let me use her sewing machine when I was 3 years old, and I started making my own things. And well, my mom was very fashionable, but she made a lot of her own clothes, and she let me sew. And I'll never forget, my first outfit was a pencil skirt with a slit up the back, and I wore it with an off the shoulder. So I'm like maybe in grade 1, off the shoulder top, and those plastic high heels with the sparkles in them. I would say that was my first foray into fashion. And then, of course, after that, I started looking at, all the pictures in Eaton's catalog, which we got twice a year. And that was very exciting.
How old were you when you started sewing, Mom?
3.
3 years old?
Yeah.
Was that normal in your community?
No, it wasn't normal at all. But my mom encouraged me. She didn't, imagine. She let me play with her prized possession, her Singer featherweight sewing machine. And by the time I was in grade 1, I was making my own outfits.
I wonder nowadays, like when you look at the majority of the designers at the major luxury houses, do we think any of them can sew? Is that still a skill that helps in terms of the success metric for a top designer?
I think it helps. I think it's very helpful to know how to sew, because it depends on your process, your design process. Like my process is that I drape everything and then I'll stitch it together and I'll mark it, and then I take the pattern and then I do the sketch. So I work backwards. If you're an artist, a designer that sketches everything and then gives the sketch to a pattern maker, and they're responsible for making the pattern to make it into a garment, then those designers with that process probably don't sew. They start with the sketch, whereas I start with the fabric and fooling around with the fabric, and I start by draping, maybe doing some stitching while I'm draping, and that way, and then the sketch is at the end. When I finish making it, building it, I draw what I see.
So it's like you need to be able to understand how the fabric will perform.
Yes.
And how it can be constructed. And part of that ability is your sewing brain.
Yeah. Yeah. And also fabric utilization, because my mom always told me, if you have more fabric left over after you've cut something, if it's more than fits in the palm of your hand, then you've wasted fabric. So economical use of the fabric. So I'll often design something specifically to fit into the width of the fabric and utilize the bulk of the fabric, which we do in our brand. Therma Kota is all of the offcuts are used to make other products.
Bernadette has asked, in Northern Ontario, what town?
Cochenour. Cochenour, Cochenour. I'm sure no one has heard of it. The closest big town, which had 1,500 people in it, was Red Lake. So most people say they're from Red Lake, and I do too, but I lived in a town about 20 miles away called Cochenour, and each one of these little towns had a gold mine. And so my dad was a gold miner.
And we have another question from KG in Vegas asking, I want to get back into draping. Is there a dress form that you'd recommend, that you can suggest?
This is a really great question, by the way. I actually had a dress form custom made about 25 years ago, and I'm still using the same one now. I got it from a company in California. They've since gone out of business, but look for a Jody. Well, okay, there are all kinds of mannequins, bust forms, dress forms on the market. If you can go with a measuring tape and see that bust form before you purchase it, that's what I recommend, because most bust forms have a bust point that's too high, like a very perky, youthful breast level, and that's not realistic. Most most dress forms don't have any tummy at all, and I had mine made with it.
That's true. They're always like
just
concave.
Absolutely flat.
Yeah.
And most dress forms don't have a thigh, So, the upper thigh that has some girth to it is not represented on dress forms. So I think that if you take your own measurements or take the measurements of somebody who you want to be your standard size, 8 or medium, or like pick a standard size and then go and find a Judy that corresponds to those measurements. The other thing is right here in the back, most dress forms are very straight there. And in actual fact, everybody has a little bit of a curve right there in the back of their neck. And that's something else I had built into but I wish that company was still in business, because I'd be sending them a lot of people to get their dress forms made.
Thanks for answering that, Mom. That's really interesting.
I hope that helps.
We're getting a lot of other questions in here. So we're getting on both your feed and mine. People are wondering, do you have native blood? Asks
Do
America
I have native
5677.
blood? You know what? This is a great question. No, I do not have indigenous North American blood from Turtle Island, but my father's family were Sami, and they are the indigenous people of northern Sweden, Norway, and Finland.
Kind of where, like Lapland, where Scandinavia kind of where the countries all become one at the top.
Yeah, and it's called Sapmi. And before they created the countries of Norway, Sweden, and Finland, that northern region was all Sapmi, and that's where the indigenous Sami live. So I have a real connection with indigenous people in North America, especially in northwestern Ontario, where I grew up in Kitchener. A large percentage of the population were indigenous, and I felt a real affinity. I really felt comfortable with the indigenous people, and to this day, I continue to collaborate with with indigenous people in Canada. And I found out as an adult about my Sami heritage, and it kind of
full circle.
Yeah, it kind of made sense that I have. So on my bucket list one day is to go back there to north of the Arctic Circle where my dad was born.
Jokkmokk.
Yes, and to connect with, hopefully find and connect with some of my Sami relatives.
And they have that marketplace there that I reported on once for Vogue Scandinavia, and it's like the winter market.
Yes.
It's the oldest continually running marketplace in the world. Isn't that wild?
Yeah. So it'd be cool
really
to go
beautiful.
there. We should go there.
Yeah. It's not that far from here.
No, it's not.
We could literally go for the weekend from here.
Oh my God, wouldn't that be great?
It'd be so fun.
Oh my God.
So inspiring.
I want to make myself a traditional Sami outfit.
Because there were bright colors there too, like red,
royal blue and red. And it's very similar to the Inuit style of dressing, which is a system of layers and decorated. Of course, the silhouette is different, but some of the principles are similar in the Sami traditional dress and the Inuit traditional dress.
MJ0506 says, oh, you have a Canadian legend beside you. P.S. I know your mother.
No,
you're the Canadian legend.
No, you're a legend. You know what? I got to tell you something. Mosha is like, if any of you have children and you go, my child's a goddamn genius.
Mom.
Everybody thinks their child is a genius, I think. Mosha is like a fashion savant. Have you not noticed how
You're a design savant. You're a fabric and sewing and design savant.
Okay, I'll take that.
I just know a lot about fashion by osmosis.
But you're like an encyclopedia. I mean, I don't know where you learned all this stuff.
I don't know. It's like how Dad knows so much about sports. Like my brain seems to just have an endless capacity for information about fashion. And I wish I could absorb other information, like other topics, with the same like abundance that I seem to.
No, you've really honed in on the fashion. And when she was growing up, because I was a fashion designer, I saw all of the really nasty underbelly of fashion, and a lot of beautiful young women developing eating orders because they weren't tall enough, they weren't thin enough. And I didn't want that to happen to my two girls. So I forbid any fashion magazines from coming in the house. I didn't have them even coming into my business, because I just knew that the ideal body type that the fashion magazines were representing back then was something that wasn't realistic, and it developed, and it could turn into some serious body dysmorphia, eating disorders, and I wanted to protect my girls from that. She used to save up her allowance and go and buy at the corner store fashion magazines, hide them under her bed so I wouldn't see them. Like, you were determined to look at fashion magazines.
Yeah.
And you became
I was hooked.
quite
I was very
obsessed with
hooked.
fashion.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
I guess it didn't, I guess my preventing you from having them just made you want them more.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so. And
Who knew it would turn into your career?
I know. Well, I started to, the problem was that I wanted to be an actress for so long. But once I kind of settled on fashion, it just made all the sense in the world, because I kind of like, I understood that industry inside out. And but
because when Mosha was 6 days old, I took her to work with me. And she came to work with me for the first year and a half of her life. And so she grew up surrounded by fabric and sewing machines. And
that's why, like, what do you think about this idea, Mom? Just quickly, because we got a bunch of questions I want to get to, of like Nepo babies. Because like in lots of parts of the world, you didn't even get a choice. You kind of had to do what your parents did because that was what they could teach you, and that was your education. And nowadays it's almost like it's used in a disparaging way. Obviously, people that get their foot in the door because of their parents, maybe if they haven't earned it, is something that makes people feel all kinds of ways. But I don't want us to just put color everyone with the same marker of Nepo baby.
Mosha, I'm sorry to say this, but I don't think you got any advantages because you were my daughter.
No, but I just think
because journalism, what I do, fashion and design and journalism, they don't.
I think I definitely
even like each other sometimes.
I think in Canada, I definitely got some advantages with starting my career. But I just mean, like, you know, if your mom is a supermodel, chances are you are going to be born
genetically
with some of the genetic makeup that could help you be a successful model via the industry's standards. And it could be the same with like photography, and it's not even like if you are immersed in something from such a young age, like I just think it's more likely that you are going to fall down that path. And I don't think that's always taking the easy way. I think that's just sometimes taking like the natural way.
Yeah, I mean, I believe God has a purpose and a plan for all of us. And if part of the plan is that you glean through your DNA or your life experience or your exposure, you glean knowledge from your parents that end up helping you choose a career, then that's part of the plan.
Yep.
You know, that could be part of the plan.
Okay. We got some great questions here now. I love this one from Suki Likes Croissants. She says, what is your guys' favorite fashion house? Let's say circa 80s and before. Ooh, I like the specificity of this. Prior to the 80s. I want to give a different answer than what I've given before. Favorite fashion house. So that means not just the designer. It's like the house.
Madeleine Vionnet.
Oh, really?
Yes. She was a contemporary of Coco Chanel's.
Yeah. We saw her exhibit at the
went to an exhibit
in Paris that time.
Was that in Paris?
Yeah.
She was a architect.
Master draper.
And I'm a draper. If you don't know what the difference is, some people draft their patterns to cut out a garment. I drape everything. So I take the actual fabric and I use my dress form and I actually cut it, the actual fabric. I actually cut the actual fabric on the form and create the silhouette that I want. And Madeleine Vionnet did that too. And she had, at one point, she had a few hundred seamstresses sewing by hand. Like, this is even before a lot of sewing machines were around. And I mean, she just, I feel like
her work.
I feel like I'm a reincarnation of Madeleine Vionnet.
I see a lot
of
parallels.
She was very successful. She had hundreds of people working for her.
And her work has this timeless quality that is really mesmerizing. Like it looks like it came out of like a Grecian classical artwork, but you could still wear it today on the red carpet. You know what I mean?
I don't know why. Like Coco Chanel is not alive anymore. Christian Dior is not alive anymore. I don't know why somebody hasn't revived the house of Madeleine Vionnet.
They've tried. I went to a Madeleine Vionnet fashion show.
Oh, really?
When it was like owned by this very wealthy Uzbekistani woman, whose name I'm forgetting now. I want to say like 8 years ago or something.
Oh, so they were trying to rewrite
in Paris.
But you know what? Nobody can do it like she.
Yeah, exactly.
What about you? What's yours?
I mean, I'm just gonna say what came to mind at first when she's pre-80s, and then I would say Saint Laurent, probably.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with old Yves Saint Laurent.
Just for like really,
he was brilliant.
Yeah, really revolutionizing the way women dressed. Even if you couldn't afford a Saint Laurent, it was the notions of like women in suiting and kind of that like that sex appeal, and that his work changed a lot in the 80s and the 90s, but I think in the 70s, especially like in the late 60s and the 70s, that whole Rive Gauche era, like I liked how it was never boring, but there was like a bit of simplicity to what he was doing.
Yeah, it was brilliant.
Absolutely
remember,
brilliant. Really strong silhouettes.
You don't remember, you weren't even born then, but one collection he did had a Russian theme. And I'm sure you've researched that. Oh, it's just gorgeous. But I'm a seriously patriotic Canadian, and there were some Canadian designers in the 80s that I think, deserve to be mentioned. And right at the top of the list would be Wayne Clark. Wayne Clark was
a brilliant evening wear designer. Dressed Diana Ross.
Yes. I mean, he had so much talent in his little finger.
He was kind of like the Halston of Canada. Is that a good comparison? Or like the Oscar de
la Renta. Yeah, of Canada. And he was incredibly talented. And then there were also people like Marilyn Brooks and Pat McDonough. There was a whole slew of Canadian designers who were really outstanding.
Okay, we have a question here. Somebody says, Whitney Mayduke says, you took inspiration from your mom's look, ? Incredible. How do you both inspire each other's style?
Well, I'm wearing my apron, which I wear all the time.
Which is for sale on Therma Kota.
I prefer the gold one. So when we were getting ready to do this
tonight, the apron is Therma Kota.
It's from Therma Kota.
Which is our family business.
This is my work apron. And Mosha said, you need to wear a silver apron because I'm wearing silver.
So we wanted to kind of coordinate. But wait,
to answer the question,
we got to answer the question. How do we inspire each other's style? I mean, I definitely feel like growing up in the 90s when my mom would wear one color, like head to toe, and really color drench, I think that's called now, in a very saturated way. Like you were not color blocking and you were not like mixing and clashing. You were matching. Everything matched down to the shoes, head to toe, and the lipstick, and the whole thing was so coordinated.
Well, my lipstick didn't match my clothes.
I mean, if you're wearing red, it did.
I would change my makeup to suit the clothes.
If you're wearing peach, it did.
Yeah.
I mean, and the accessories, it was very like, it was that idea of power dressing, but nothing masculine about it. Like it was, my mom was very in touch with her feminine side and also a boss with hundreds of employees and dressed in a way that commanded attention and respect, but also was very vivid and bright and colorful and playful. And I think I don't wear as much color as you did in the 90s, but I think that idea of like dressing for success, and you definitely ingrained that in me. And to like dress up and to show your respect for the people you're with and the space that you're occupying by putting effort into what you're wearing.
Yes. And I learned that from my mom, who, I mean, after all, we lived in the bush. Okay. And my mom raised me with the saying, Linda, if you're ever in doubt about what to wear to an event, always dress a little bit more dressed up than you think is necessary, because it shows your respect for your hosts.
Yeah, like we weren't really into jeans, and you always told me like that wasn't really something that grandma liked. That wasn't really something that you liked. Like,
no, we're not jeans people.
No, we've always erred on the side of like dressier and dressing up.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And that kind of like polish. And I think you've really had that. You've really impacted my style in that way. I don't know how I've impacted your style. I mean, the glasses.
The glasses.
Looking
yeah.
at it right in the face.
No, you know what? I listen to your news fash content, and you're on your podcasts on Spotify. That's where I get my fashion information.
Oh my gosh, I love
I
it.
know. I sometimes listen to them 3 times, Mosha.
Because you're my super
And so
fan.
I go, okay, so when I was packing to come here, you know, your last one,
Yeah.
you said you're mixing navy and black and gray and brown and all
Low
the
contrast
neutral colors
neutrals.
all together. That's how I pack for this trip.
It works in the English countryside.
Well, it's working so far. Let me, I've got my gray flannel shirt,
Drab
black pants.
Drab is fab. That's the motto for 2025.
So yeah, that's how I'm learning from her. Every time I listen to it, she's got another TikTok. I hurry up and go and listen to it.
I can see you. That's so funny, Mom. And I learned from you all the like life essentials on Life Hacks Linda, from how to crisp lettuce, which is one of your most viral videos.
Yes.
To what's some of the other great ones you've done? I mean, definitely all about waste, not want, not definitely about like small repairs that you can do yourself, be it buttons.
Yeah.
Definitely you've taught me.
We live in a throwaway society, and it drives me crazy.
Yeah.
Like, you buy something and instead of fixing it, if it breaks, you throw it away and buy a new one. And it's cheaper.
It's wild. Okay.
I just hate this throwaway world we live in.
Amanda Verose says, you ladies are gorgeous. Thank you, Amanda. Mom is kind of giving Joni Mitchell in the best way.
I love Joni Mitchell. Oh my God, I grew up. Thank you so much. That just is such a compliment, because I'm such a fan of Joni Mitchell, and I got her songbook, and I was learning to play her songs on the ukulele, and I know a lot of the lyrics to her songs. So thank you. I love her.
There's so many nice comments here. Thank you so much, everyone. Somebody said we look like sisters, twinning. There was some other good ones here. Suki Likes Croissants says, I've seen Wayne Clark's work. Love. Yeah, Wayne, that would be a good one to source on the vintage and consignment market, is Wayne Clark. You could find some gorgeous dresses, cocktail attire.
Oh, just magnificent.
Etc.
He's such a talented designer.
Okay, Red Star says, thoughts on Mathieu Blasi going to Chanel, and who's going to take over Bottega Veneta? Have you seen any of Mathieu Blasi's collections, maybe on Newsflash for Bottega Veneta? Yeah.
Well, I've been to the Bottega Veneta store.
Yes.
In LA with you.
Yes, that's true.
Was he designing when we were there?
I
thought the things were fabulous.
I think that was more in Daniel Lee's era.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, whoever was doing all those bags with all the
Intrecciato,
all the leather all laced together in every dimension and scale. So no, I can't say I'm familiar with his work.
The last show, I mean, do you remember seeing those jeans? They looked like denim, but it was actually printed leather.
Yeah.
And like a tank top looked like a white cotton tank top, but it was also leather. So he's really into like material manipulation.
Okay, so here's the truth.
Tell us, Mom. Honestly, how are you feeling?
As a fashion designer, I don't follow fashion.
Yeah.
I only follow it through Newsflash and I follow it through you. I don't read fashion magazines.
I don't think a true like designer,
I'm not a student of fashion,
can be also like staying up to date on what everyone else is doing in the other collections.
Yeah, and I always, when I was designing like 1,000 styles a year, and doing 3-4 collections a year, I found that if I ever was in a situation where I was walking through a department store or a fashion store or something like that, I would get really confused, and I'd say to myself, why do I need to make another thing? There's better designers than me, and there's so much merchandise out on the market. And
this is what you would say to me when you took me back to school shopping. You'd have like an existential crisis about your own like carear, and I'd be like, I just want like a skirt. And you'd be like, there's too many things.
Why am I bothering? Why am I working like a dog to make these 1,000 styles a year when there's so much merchandise already out here? And then somebody would say, Linda, get back to work, go to your studio. And the ideas that just came from my own
I
creativity.
would probably say that to you at the age of like 8.
Yeah, Mom just get back to work. I find that if I'm too suggestible.
But I think we all are in our like métier that we're creative at. Like you need to.
Yeah, but when you read another fashion writer's work, do you think I'm going to quit the business because they're way better than me?
Sometimes
Really?
I'm like, why do I bother this person's? Yes.
Well, that's how following fashion has that effect on me.
Can anyone else relate to that in your industry? Like, no matter what it is, that if you are like looking too much side to side versus forward, or taking in the work of others that is like adjacent to you, that it can really deter you from what your central mission is, or like be demotivational.
Yeah. People used to say to me, like people that were in sales and marketing, they used to say, well, we should ask our customers what they want.
Yeah.
And do a marketing study, and that's going to give you a guideline for what to make going forward in the next collection. And I said, customers don't know what they want. They know what they wanted yesterday, and they know what they wanted today. But if you ask them and then you make what they don't know what they want in the future. They know what they wanted yesterday and today, but not tomorrow.
Oh, listening to customer feedback too is another way to just do your head in.
But you know what I mean? It's like, as a designer or as a journalist, you have to be ahead of your customer so that when they finally catch up to you, what you've done, they go, oh, I didn't know I wanted that, but I really want that.
Too much feedback, I think, can be crippling. This is
Exactly.
This is so
This
random.
is a life hack.
Yeah, it is. But do you want to know where
protect yourself from what everybody else is doing in your, in your wheelhouse, where you've decided your passion is. You almost need to go inward, go and walk in the woods, go and do something, jump in a cold lake, do something that takes your mind off of what everybody else is doing, and then just use that as a way to bubble up your own creative ideas.
When I first had started on TikTok and downloaded the app, and at first the algorithm is getting used to like what you like, so it's showing you some pretty random stuff and you have to train it. I remember I was getting videos from, I forget her name, but it was a young like OnlyFans kind of sex worker. She's like a young porn star who was very transparent about her business model and was very entrepreneurial. And I was intrigued, I have to say. And she said in one of her videos, and I'll never forget it because this was like more than 3 years ago now or something. She said, if you want to use this app, you have to decide if you're going to be a creator or a consumer, because you can't do both. And it really stuck with me because I thought, yeah, like I could be using this time where I'm just like doom scrolling other people's work that isn't really of value to me, or I could be spending it making things that are of value to others and that are way more personally satisfying to me. Creator or a consumer?
Way to go, Mosha.
Decide what
that's it. And that's why you're so good at what you do, because you're not trying to mirror or mimic anybody else. You've got your own voice, your own unique style.
But I think it just goes to show you that inspiration can be anywhere. Like that sex worker really inspired me. No, she did. That was the pep talk that I needed. We did get a lot more questions here. Somebody else said, are you in the Cotswolds? No, we are slightly north of the Cotswolds, but we are in the English countryside. We are currently in an office, in my house, and it's like got these crazy paneled walls, and it's more than 400 years old. If these walls could talk. Somebody else says, how do you feel about Chanel's projection next year? Do you mean their sales projections? Because they don't really publicize sales projections. I honestly think the next year for Chanel is going to be a bit quiet because their new designer, Mathieu Blazy, he doesn't show his first collection for the house till next September. So they're really giving him, they've just announced that he's in the role now. We're in December. They're giving him 10 months.
That's not that much time. Actually, when you consider, You have to develop the fabrics.
Yeah.
You have to come up with your color story. I bet you he's started working on it right now, even though he doesn't start work until like May or something like that. But the process of going from zero to a finished collection takes a year.
I also think if you are in the lucky position that a Chanel is in, where despite like some real criticism of the past few years in the collections under Virginie Viard, their sales actually went up. Like that is a brand that has the luxury of consumer loyalty, and they're the second biggest fashion brand in the world. They have the like high-end luxury fashion brand. Next to Hermes, they have the ability to take their time. Like they are not in a kind of lifesaver mode. They're in an evolution mode. And I think there's something very like strategic about the idea that like this is a historical appointment. There haven't been the only designers that Chanel has ever had, right? You look at these houses that have had tons of designers. Chanel's had Coco Chanel, Karl Lagerfeld, Virginie Viard. Mathieu Blazy is only the fourth designer for a brand that started in the 1920s.
Yeah.
So, and the reality is, if it works out with Mathieu Blazy, great. If it doesn't, Chanel will be fine. He won't be fine. He will, like, for him, the stakes could not be higher.
Yeah.
Could not be. So I think that's why they're trying to set him up for success. And I was thinking, Mom, like, what if he made tweed out of leather? Like, what if he...
there was a Canadian designer, her name was Marilyn Bloomer.
Uh-huh.
And she used to weave leather, fur, and yarn together. And it made like a boucle, a tweed, like it had a tweedy look. Yeah, that could be really cool. But do you see what I mean? That it's not just what you see on the runway. The fabric in that garment had to be created from zero as well. So these designers work with the fabric mills to say, okay, take this color yarn and that color yarn, weave it together, and I want these three shades of blue lab dipped for my sweater collection. And that has to be done, in another mill. And
it's an art form. It's like a tapestry.
A designer actually designs the fabric too.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people know that. And some fabric mills will come, like all the fabric mills all over the world want to sell to Chanel, trust me. And so they'll go with their very best offerings to the house of Chanel. Those designers don't go to the textile shows that I go to, but they have the world textile market at their fingertips. And for me, my whole approach to design is the fabric is the most important.
Yeah.
And if you listen to the fabric, if you let the fabric speak, if you let the fabric reveal itself when you're styling it, then deciding what to make from the fabric sort of flows from that.
So here's the thing. I would love to see Mathieu Blazy really innovate on the fabric front, because if you think about what Karl Lagerfeld did, I think he took the same materials, I mean, gorgeous tweeds, and just did it over and over and over again, and reinvented like the way that the tweed was designed or presented. Mm-hmm. But what I don't think Chanel has done is really the tweed is so in the Chanel's DNA that really is what leather is to Bottega, tweed is to Chanel, but really reinvent what tweed can be.
Yeah, I agree. I think that would be a great instruction to give him to really be innovative with the fabrics.
Because I think tweed needs that too. Like if I had to pick my top 3 favorite fabrics, I think tweed would be in that top 3.
Really?
I love a good tweed. But I find so much of what you see in the market in tweed, it's either like super kind of like prissy Upper East Side type, like, little suiting things, or it's this very English countryside, like Gentile vibe. I want to see things that are completely like out of those realms that you've never thought of before in tweed.
Yeah, that would be a great challenge for him.
Like, I love when Ray Kawakubo at Comme des Garçons has made things out of tweed. I love how other designers have approached like Chanel isms without the
Yeah.
same kind of like weight that Chanel carries and just more like fun.
Yeah, I have to admit that when Ray Kawakubo of Comme des Garçons made the transition from her styles, which were like, whoa, they were like out there, really unusual architectural shapes. And I could see her transitioning into conforming to more of a regular cut of garment, a tailored cut and everything. I kind of was sad because I thought, oh, she feels like she has to do that. She feels like she has to be that way when her designs, which were totally unique and crazy and wonderful, were her unique, unique offering. And I was kind of sad when I saw her making more tailored things. And
No, it's only in stores, Mom. Like, if you still look at the runways, she does crazy showpieces and you can order those. Like, I'm on a WhatsApp group at Dover Street Market and like they're like, oh, would you like this like dress with a bulbous on the back of it, da, 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 and tools sprouting out the front. And like, she still is very experimental, but I think Comme des Garçons has done a really good job of like building out a commercial side of that business to afford the experimentalness.
Actually, I have to correct something. I sound like a hypocrite because just a few minutes ago I said that I don't follow fashion. The one exception is Comme des Garçons. I do follow her.
You love Comme des Garçons. You like Phoebe?
Because I really admire the crafts, the skill, the mastery of what she does. And
you like Phoebe Philo too. You do. You've commented a lot and you've spoken to me about that whenever I've made videos about her work.
Only on your channel. That's the way I follow.
That's someone's work who I think you respond to. You like Phoebe Philo.
Yeah, but I like you.
But Phoebe Philo, I'm not a designer. Phoebe Philo.
I know, but I like listening to you talk about fashion.
Yeah. I like talking about Phoebe Philo. I find she's like almost the modern day Coco Chanel in a lot of ways.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't know that much about her.
I think you and her have a similar approach to thinking outside the box, but still making things extremely wearable.
Okay.
Okay. So Rodrigo Maro Jr. says, what is the biggest difference in the industry from when Linda started in fashion from nowadays? What's the biggest difference in the fashion industry from now and when you started? So you started your brand
from when I started and now?
Yeah. So if you would have started your brand in the late 70s, early 80s?
No, 1974.
Oh my God. It's so long ago, Mom.
I was 23 years old.
23.
The biggest difference. Okay. So what is the question again?
What is the biggest difference between 1974 fashion industry and 2024 fashion industry that you find?
Well, the most exciting thing is the arrival of technology.
I love that you have an attitude where you embrace new technology, Mom. I think it's such a good quality.
I love technology. Why? Because I'm lazy. And when I had my company and I was starting out, all the patterns were made with paper patterns. And we had a whole room full of paper patterns. And you not only had a size 8, but you had a size 2, 4, 6, 8, 24, up to 24, and all in paper. When I got my first digitizing machine, which digitized the paper pattern into the computer, and the grading was done right on the screen, it saved us so much time and space and everything like that. And then we went into computerized pattern making, computerized cutting. I had 2 cutting machines that you fed in the pattern shapes on a marker and it automatically cut. And then I got 2 of those. And so our whole company used a CAD/CAM system, computer assisted design, CAD, computer assisted manufacturing, CAD/CAM, in our company. And we were very technologically advanced for our size. And I just loved the technology. And I think that that's one of the biggest changes in the industry. But I do have to say that now that I'm making things for Therma Kota, our brand, our family brand, I've gone back to paper patterns, believe it or not, because I can't cut 100 or 200 pieces at a time.
Because we're working with shearling.
We're working with shearling. We have to cut one at a time. So some of the technology no longer applies, which is kind of interesting because I feel like I've gone full circle.
Yes.
And the good thing is I know how to do the technology, but I also know how to do the manual patterns. The way I'm also a pattern maker, so I make my own patterns.
I don't know if a lot of people will realize that, though, and it's a good point that when you are buying a lot of your garments, they are made by layering the fabric and cutting a whole bunch in that size at once. And it's only certain garments, like obviously shearling, a lot of leather, would you say, too?
Yes.
For maybe some thicker materials and wools. Obviously, if something's like a knit construction where it's like made on an industrial knitting machine, but a lot of things we wear, like t-shirts, shirting, denim, that kind of thing, they're like literally mass produced through the power of technology.
And speaking of fabric design, technology has evolved to be a very useful tool in the design of fabric, prints, engineered designs of various kinds can all be developed using computer technology. So the technology that's available now is very exciting in terms of its impact on fashion. Do you remember we went to that show in New York and it was comparing how a gown that was all hand beaded the manual way was beside a very similar gown that they had used machinery. So this one took, 45 days
to try to see if you could tell the difference.
And this one took 2.5 hours, all on a machine. And it was unbelievable how much better actually the machine made one actually looked. Although there was a certain beauty in the slight imperfections in the manual one. But I think that there's so many ways of mechanizing really beautifully detailed embroidery, beading, all kinds of stuff like that, that these machines are being developed to do it quickly. Now, are we charging less for it? I don't know.
Exactly.
So there's a machine or a series of machines around a circle. They start with just the fabric. They cut, put together, and sew a pair of sneakers with, all the little pieces and everything. Goes around like that, and every 11 minutes, a pair of sneakers pops out.
Wild. Because if you look at your average
Right?
pair of sneakers, like the amount of components that are in it from
This machine cut, sewed, everything, and there was nobody there. There was one person just taking the shoes and putting them in a box. That was the only handling.
Oh my gosh. This is your fashion homework for the week. We do fashion homework every week.
Okay. I know because I do
you do the homework as well?
I do the homework. Yeah.
Okay. Go pull out a pair of sneakers and count the number of materials and pieces. Count the number of pieces and count the number of materials. I guarantee you it's more than 10 on each of those categories that go into just that one style of shoe that's incredibly technical,
Yes. And the pieces have to be put together in a certain order. And maybe using a different machine for this step compared to that step.
Okay. Okay. Oh, this is a very important question we're getting here. Somebody says, how are both of your bangs so smooth without frizz and so razor sharp?
I cut mine myself.
I sometimes trim my own, but I try not to because then my hairstylist gets mad at me because I do a crooked job. I think I arch one eyebrow while I'm doing it so that they turn out uneven.
They're hardly ever the same on both sides, but I knew I was going to visit Mosha, so I really went out of my way to do them. But
the answer is
just practice.
Practice makes perfect. Round brush.
Oh, and the other thing is I don't go like this. I start in the middle and I go this way. Yeah. And then to the halfway point.
Lean in,
and then I go and match it up.
This is the hairstyle that suits our head and our face shape and our hair type. We both have like fine hair, but a lot of it. So it'll, and straight hair. So it allows the bangs to just like lay flat. I think if I had like curly, coarse hair, I don't know if I'd do this hairstyle because it would probably be too high maintenance.
No, I always wanted curly hair.
Me too. This is a good question. What do you think of programs like Project Runway, asks Roberto F. Valentin.
Again, I don't really watch Project Runway.
Me either.
I know I'm familiar with Christian Siriano's work. I've been to some of his shows. I don't know if I ever really watched it. It always seemed to me like it was geared towards an audience that doesn't know very much about fashion because it was very gimmicky. Remember when I was a judge on that Canadian version of Project Runway, Mom Stitched?
Yeah.
An episode of that. Yeah.
Well, there is one exception on Project Runway Canada.
Yes.
I think it was the very first one. A brilliant designer from the prairies somewhere named Evan Biddell.
Oh, yes, that's true. But he won the first season. It's always the first winner.
Evan Biddell, EVAN BIDDELL. Evan Biddell, look it up on TikTok. He has a play suit that he is selling in the most incredible variety of prints and plain jerseys. And it's fabulous. I bought one and I just love wearing mine. Check out Evan Biddell because he won Project Runway the first season. It was done in Canada. It's not really the way things work in the fashion industry.
I learned that when I was doing.
Like, do policemen watch police shows?
No, exactly.
Do lawyers watch law shows?
It's true. Also, Red Star says Iris van Herpen, who's a Belgian designer, is my favorite. Iris van Herpen.
Oh,
yeah. She makes like art pieces.
It's very unusual. It's
very avant-garde.
Very innovative.
Great for like celebrity.
Great use of technology, by the way.
Yes.
She uses 3D printing.
Great also for collectors, great for musicians, really artful and personality packed. And she also said
she's a genius.
Yeah. Yes. She also said Chanel and Hermes prices are outrageous. Yes, this is one of the biggest conversations that everybody wants to have right now. I'm finding both on social media and also in legacy media is about the pricing problem in the fashion industry. And honestly, I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that for whatever reason, over the past like 5 to 7 years, so many brands have shuttered that used to service more of that like mid-tier level of the market. In my mom's day, it was called Bridge.
Yeah.
And it was like a designer brand, but it wasn't a luxury designer brand. Do you know what I mean? And there was like, you were assuming, rightfully so, that you were getting a certain level of design mixed with a high level of quality at like not a cheap, but a fair price point. And it was investment dressing, but it wasn't ludicrous.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's like Bridge is like a price point that for some people, it's the most expensive thing they'll ever buy. And for some people, it's the least expensive thing they'll ever buy.
It's that sweet spot.
That's what Bridge is. It's like the low end of the high end market, and it's the high end of the lower end market. And so, you know, if you can sell to everybody from a school teacher to a CEO, rock star, or whatever, if there's that's what the Bridge category is. There still a Bridge category?
It used to be called contemporary, but like there's less and less of those brands. And I think things have become more and more disparate where it's like fast fashion versus luxury fashion. And
there isn't that middle ground.
Yes.
Somebody should do that more.
And both of those segments of the market are flawed. Like fast fashion, you're like, this should cost more. And I'm almost not comfortable with how cheap this is because I don't want to contribute to, overconsumption and buying something that I'm going to have to dispose of shortly.
Yeah.
And then B, I also want to purchase things that I know are made in a fair and equitable way.
Yeah.
But then you look at the luxury market and you're like, am I just paying for the brand? Like, am I being duped here? Am I this much of a lemming? And do I lack my own ability to decipher from like right and wrong that I'm willing to pay, $900 for a t-shirt from the row? Like, these are the questions I think.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, that's
See, this is one of the reasons I don't shop in stores, because as a designer, I look at the garment and I go, okay, I know the fabric must probably cost this much, probably took an hour and a half to make. And then there's the marketing and all that stuff. I know how much something should cost, and then there's costing, and then there's pricing. And I just can't bring myself to pay the kind of money that that the prices are demanding, and so that's why I make everything myself.
Well, that's one way around it, but not everyone has that like skill and that talent.
Exactly.
Although I did, that panel I did in Copenhagen this summer with Andrea Chong, who's a TikToker, and an author, and she talks a lot about this idea of like learning to make things and not losing that skill of being able to make some of your own things, and at least understanding how things are made, so that when you are looking at something in a store, you have a better appreciation for how it's priced, and can make the necessary justifications if you need to. Okay, Saint Virgil said, OMG, you were interviewing your future self. I am. I know. It's like, I don't need to worry like how I'm going to age, because I can just look at my mom and she's so fantastic and beautiful and cool. And I know it's all going to be okay. What are your thoughts on Machu Blazy joining Chanel? I think our thoughts are, we're really interested in the fact that everyone else is so interested in this. And I think it's just going to take time, and we're just going to have to wait and see. But I do think they wanted a designer that would stay there for like 20 years. He's like 38 now, so be there till he's at least 58. That's what they're hoping from this tenure, and we shall see. But when you talk about pricing, like Chanel bags, like the last Chanel bag I got from the store, the others I had were secondhand. Right after I got it, they increased the price of that exact bag by over $2,000.
My God.
And they're really trying to make it so that their like main bags are starting at now close to 10K. And if you look at like a few years ago, Chanel bags, most of their main bags were under 5K. So that's like almost a 50% increase in like 5 years. They're aggressively increasing prices because they want to position themselves closer to Hermes. But I just think if they're going to do that, then they need to offer more innovation and higher quality and just better hardware choices. And the hardware originally in Chanel bags, when Karl Lagerfeld was designing them on, like especially in the 90s, it was 24 karat gold plated.
No.
Now
Really?
it's just like metal that tarnishes and scratches really easily. Like,
wow.
You can't charge more and give less, I don't think.
Somebody said to me once, a business advice consultant, when we were dealing with this whole idea of costing, you can't charge your customers for your own inefficiency.
I love that. You can't. It's not their fault that you haven't figured out, how to make the margins work. Like, I think if you want to charge 10K for a bag, like make a bag with real gold hardware, or do something that like actually warrants the prices that you're trying to charge. Like, at least with Hermes, it's handmade and the quality is, kind of untouchable.
So like, take this apron, for example. If you go to buy this, it's $75 on our website, Therma Kota. Okay. The fabric that's in here costs $25 a meter. I can get 2 aprons out of a meter. So that's what's it? Half of 25. That's $12.50. It takes an hour and a half to sew it and cut it and sew it. So how much I'm paying my cutter or sewer, add that together, and then there's other expenses. But the costing formula, if let's say it takes, with fabric and everything, let's say it takes $25 just in fabric and material alone, you can't just all of a sudden go and charge $500 for this. It's just not right.
It's not right.
So when you go to buy something and you say, well, why is it so expensive? You say, well, there's the fabric. We had to charge you for the fabric. Okay, I'll pay for the fabric. We had to charge you for having somebody sew it. Yeah, okay, I'm willing to pay for that. That's valuable. Somebody had to cut it. Yeah, okay. Somebody had to do quality control. Yeah, okay. Somebody had to do pressing. We had to take photographs of it to put it online. Okay, well, and then we had to ship it from God only knows where to God only knows where. And you go, I don't want to pay for that. Like, I don't want, you have to decide if the price tag is actually represented by value in the product, or if the price tag is just representing the prestige of the brand name. I saw a documentary on Hermes.
The 60 Minutes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Wasn't that fabulous?
everyone's talking about that right now. I just saw like most of the clips from it. I haven't seen the whole
But when you look at the process of making things, where they have people with needles, hand needles going in and out of these holes.
Did it justify the price for you?
Well, I don't know what the price is, but that's a very painstaking, laborious process.
Like 12,000.
Well, for some of them, yeah. I guess
Yeah.
that it's really a lot of labor.
The other thing is that they retain their value.
Yes. And the quality of the leather, I'm sure, is like outstanding.
And also it's like the way that they treat their employees. You know, in that there's a really good podcast called Acquired, and they have a 4-hour episode. Maybe I'll send it to you. You might like listening to it for the plane ride, but about Hermes, and they were saying that they refuse to call any of their production facilities factories. They only refer to them as workshops, and they cap it at like 100 people, because when it becomes more than 100 people, then you can't know everyone's name, and they want to create environments there where everyone knows everyone's name and where they keep that culture of like artisanship.
Yeah, it's definitely got an artisan quality to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe I got an Hermes cape.
I know, it looks so great on you.
It was trip. I don't have many Hermes things, but yeah, that was like a really nice surprise for my trip. My husband gave me, and when I opened the box, I thought it was for a horse initially, because it's like, it looks like a blanket.
Yeah.
And he told me he got it at a horse show, but it's like a reversible cashmere wool cape. The perfect thing to wear when you're traveling.
You're going to have to wear that on
wrapped
your
in a
TikToks.
blanket. Yeah, I should. I'll wear it on the next one.
Capes are awesome, by the way. I'm a big believer in capes.
Yes.
Because if you're wearing a bulky sweater, you put a cape over it. If you're wearing a tailored jacket, you can throw a cape over it. It
always
doesn't
fits.
restrict what you're wearing. It always fits. You can gain weight, you can lose weight. And it doesn't restrict what you're wearing. Like if you're wearing some with a sleeve and you try and get that sleeve into the sleeve of a coat.
Yeah.
And you're struggling because the armhole on one is lower than the armhole on the other. But with a cape, all you do is just throw it over everything. And it's dramatic. It's romantic.
Mummy, I saw a cape this morning when I went out for coffee, and I need to show it to you. It was like a vintage cape in the town, and it was like a Harris tweed, and it was kind of red and cream cape with a little Peter Pan collar and big leather buttons, like leather, interwoven leather round buttons. It might be a nice thing to wear for caroling.
You mean when we go caroling?
Yeah. I'll show it to you tomorrow. Okay. A few more questions and then we really have to go because it's actually quite late here. Glenn says, what is a defunct fashion house that you would be interested in being revived? I mean, Christian Lacroix. I love a good poofy mini party dress worn with a sheer pantyhose. You know what I mean? I could do with a bit of Christian Lacroix back in my life. Who else? I mean, I want to see Givenchy like properly revived. I know it's not defunct, but Givenchy has not adhered to any of the Hubert de Givenchy house codes in a very long time, in my opinion. And I hope that Sarah Burton, because she did so brilliantly at Alexander McQueen, is able to give me some of that Audrey Hepburn glamour that I'm craving. And simplicity and purity. Any other defunct brands you can think of that you want to bring back? I don't know.
The only one I can think of is Halston, and I love to design the Halston line because I think very similar.
They've tried to revive Halston so many times. Remember when Sarah Jessica Parker?
They need a Halston thinking person.
Yeah. Well, they say that Tom Ford is like the new Halston. Okay. Schiaparelli to me is worth the investment. It's harder to counterfeit. The funny thing about Schiaparelli is I don't see people wearing it IRL or like even online. I see a lot of hoopla around the runway shows. I see a lot of love for Daniel Roseberry, who's a very talented designer. But like I've seen a few pieces at Dover Street Market. I know it's carried at Bergdorf's, and that woman Abby, who's on here on TikTok, is a sales associate at Bergdorf's and shares a lot of the Schiaparelli pieces, but I don't necessarily like see the brand infiltrating culture in the way that I think maybe it should based upon its like earned media impact whenever they have a show.
I would say. And maybe that's because their designs are so elaborate. Like each button is completely custom. And Schiaparelli was always so known for her buttons. Like that was her thing. If Coco Chanel had her tweeds, Schiaparelli, it was like the trompe l'oeil, the knits, and the buttons. That was the real commercial side of her business. Okay, what countries are making big moves in fashion at the moment, in your opinion, asks Glenn. Well, I did a video recently talking about Nigeria and the fashion scene in Lagos.
And you actually were there, weren't you?
I've never been to Lagos. No, I've been to Kenya.
Kenya.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of brilliant Kenyan designers that show in Lagos. Like Lagos is really kind of like the New York of Africa in a lot of ways, in terms of it's a fashion capital. So I would definitely say that. I also think Japan. I mean, it's not that Japan's new on the scene, but there's so many talented Japanese designers. Korea, South Korea.
I would say Korea by far.
Huge.
Again, not that I'm a follower of fashion, but from a fabric point of view, the most innovative, fabulous fabrics are coming out of Korea. It used to be, when I first started in the business, the best fabrics came out of Japan and Europe. And then it became, it shifted from Japan and Europe to Europe and China. And then it became more China and less Europe. And then some wonderful fabrics started coming out of Korea. And I would say that Korea is now the textile capital of the world. It's producing wonderful things. And as a natural offshoot of as I said, fabric should come first, in my opinion. When you've got the fabric, the design, it flourishes after that. And it's certainly evident in the designs coming out of Korea. I would love to go to Korea.
Me too. I have a friend, that was telling me too. He's got like ins and ways that you can shop wholesale in Korea, because apparently, I mean, there's a lot of good brands coming out of Korea too that do satisfy what we're speaking about, which is that like mid-tier part of the market where you're still getting a lot of design and a lot of fashion, but it's not at a luxury price point.
And a lot of music coming out of there too, which sometimes goes hand in hand with fashion.
True. Somebody else said that they agreed with Christian Lacroix. Ray Ramirez says, I'm biased because I interned him, but I say Narciso Rodriguez. The book that I'm currently reading is like a biography of Carolyn Bessette Kennedy.
Mm-hmm. He made her wedding gown. Gorgeous. Simple.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And he is such a talented designer, and he worked for a long time at Calvin Klein. And I think that's where she first met him, because she was doing the PR at Calvin Klein. And I agree. Narciso Rodriguez, the Puig, who owns his fragrance license, they still make a ton of money. Like any duty free you go to in the world, they have Narciso Rodriguez. But it's funny to me how the brand itself hasn't been able to continue. You used to always wear Narciso Rodriguez. Also was like Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
Oh, really?
And Juliana Margulies as well.
That's so interesting because they're petite.
Just like those beautiful, kind of very flattering square neck gowns to like the Emmys in 1999. Okay. Last questions to go. Is that your mom? No, this is just somebody that I've recently met who looks a lot like me, and knows a lot about me, and I know a lot about her. So we decided to do a little Q&A together. Oh, so I just wanted to thank everyone so much.
Yeah, our very first live. Thanks, guys, for joining us.
For tuning in and for taking the time to ask all these wonderful questions. And if you'd like to learn more about Therma Kota, you can check that out at thermakota.com.
Bye.
Happy holidays.
That wraps your news fash. I'm Mosha Lundström Halbert. Stick with me here and over on TikTok to stay up to date on all things fashion. If you have any questions or guest suggestions or feedback, please drop us a line at mosha@newsfashmedia.com.